Okay, so, we're always on the lookout for stuff that you send our way, and um, somebody sent something in just recently that really stopped us in our tracks.
Yeah.
We get a lot of really interesting stuff, but this was something different, and I wanted to dive into it today and get your take on this because it's heavy stuff, but it's really important.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it comes from South Sudan, and the speaker identifies himself as just a concerned citizen. Um, but the thing that struck us right away was that this wasn't coming from like a political angle.
Right.
It felt like a truly human message. And it was the son of retired General Joseph Legout.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, and so this deep dive is not about politics or taking sides or anything like that. It's about the core message,
Yeah.
which is the safety and the well-being of the people of South Sudan
Right.
in the midst of what is a really escalating conflict.
Right. And it sounds like a very timely message, too, given all the recent events.
Absolutely, yeah, and the urgency in his voice, the the things that he's describing, the conflict between the White Army and government forces, which includes now the Ugandan army, it paints a picture of a situation that's really precarious for innocent civilians.
Yeah, for sure. And when we think about, the history of South Sudan and all the struggles they've gone through to even get to this point, it's really heartbreaking to hear that this is happening yet again.
Yeah, absolutely. And the reason why I wanted to share this with you is because right from the start, he's so clear about his intention. And he says, I'm not here to take sides. I'm here to talk about safety and survival and the hope for peace for every South Sudanese person. So that's the mission of this deep dive. Let's break down what he's saying and really try to understand what's going on and how we can maybe even help.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to echo that, I think it's so important to remember that at the end of the day, this is about human lives and the impact this conflict is having on individuals and families.
Exactly. So where does he begin?
Well, the first thing he emphasizes is the immediate need for safety, and he's very direct about it.
Okay.
He says, avoid any areas of conflict without hesitation, and if possible, relocate to safer regions.
Yeah, it's not abstract at all. It's
Yeah,
very practical advice.
exactly. It's a matter of survival.
Yeah.
And he also points out the dangers of large gatherings right now, which, really highlights how indiscriminate this violence can be.
Right. Anyone can become a target.
Exactly. And he talks about the importance of travel information, making sure you're getting reliable updates about safe routes and staying in communication with family members, especially those in more remote
Yeah,
areas.
so they know what's going on and what to be aware of.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then he talks about what to do if you can't leave your home, securing your family, making sure you have essential supplies like food and water, and keeping your communication devices charged and accessible.
It's like prepping for a natural disaster in a way.
It is. It's about being prepared for the unexpected and
Yeah.
and being able to stay informed.
And it really shows how fragile everyday life can become when conflict erupts like that.
Absolutely.
Um, and this is where it really hit me hard. He says, um, your life is more precious than anything else.
Wow.
Such a simple statement, but it's so powerful, especially in this context.
Yeah, it cuts through all the noise and reminds us what really matters.
Yeah, exactly. And it sets the stage for everything else he talks about because then he moves beyond just physical safety and he tackles this challenge that's been so deeply rooted in South Sudan, which is the issue of division.
Right, and he's very upfront about the problems of tribalism and political division.
Yeah.
And he acknowledges how much suffering these divisions have already
And
caused.
he calls for a unified response, right?
Yeah, he says, we are all South Sudanese first.
Regardless of tribal affiliation.
Exactly. Whether you're Nuer or Dinka Shilluk Bari, it doesn't matter in this moment.
He's saying that that shared identity has to be more important than any historical or political decisions.
Yeah, especially in a moment of crisis like this.
And it makes you think about how often those divisions are exploited, in conflict situations.
For sure, it's a tactic that's been used time and time again.
Yeah.
And he doesn't shy away from the impact this violence is having on civilians.
Yeah, the way he describes the mothers, the children, the elderly, bearing the brunt of the conflict, it's just
And
devastating.
it's a reminder that they're the real victims in this.
And from that point, he makes this call to action.
Right. Yeah, he says, reject hatred, help your neighbors, and guide those lost to violence back to peace.
It's powerful.
It is. It's a message of solidarity in a time of real fragmentation.
And then the message shifts to this dire humanitarian situation that's unfolding.
Right. The loss of life, the displacement, the lack of basic necessities. It's really a crisis.
And what struck me here was his emphasis on the power that individuals still have.
Even in the midst of this conflict.
Yeah, like the power to choose how we treat each other.
It's about focusing on what's within our control, even when so much feels out of reach.
Yeah, and he talks about simple acts of kindness and mutual support.
Yeah. Like sharing food, providing information about safe locations, offering medical assistance.
These things can make a real difference on the ground.
They can be lifelines for people in need.
And he specifically calls for sharing information about aid distribution points and safe routes.
Through community leaders and even through comments on this platform.
It's about leveraging these networks to get help where it's needed most.
Yeah, and it highlights the resilience of the South Sudanese people.
Absolutely.
It's not just about reacting to the crisis, but about tapping into that inner strength and that collective ability to help each other.
To endure and hopefully rebuild.
Exactly.
And then the message takes this really interesting turn where he starts addressing those in positions of authority.
Right, the people who have the power to shape the course of events.
The elders, the chiefs, the religious leaders. He urges them to guide their communities with wisdom.
To resist revenge and violence.
To use their moral authority to promote peace.
And then he has this message for the youth, which is particularly powerful.
Yeah, he cautions them against being used as instruments of war.
He tells them your future is more valuable than being a pawn in someone else's conflict.
He's asking them to look beyond the immediate turmoil and consider the long-term future of South Sudan.
The future that they will inherit.
Yeah, it's a message of hope and agency for a generation that's known so much conflict.
And then finally, he addresses the government and military leaders directly.
And it's a stark appeal for the protection of civilians.
A genuine commitment to peace.
He reminds them that their actions in this moment will define their legacy.
How they will be remembered by the people of South Sudan.
And it's a powerful call for responsible leadership.
For putting the well-being of the people first.
And then he concludes by reflecting on this very platform.
This deep dive.
And he talks about the potential for connection and information sharing that it represents.
The power of individual voices to contribute to peace.
He invites listeners to share practical information updates on safe zones, details about aid efforts.
And also messages of encouragement and hope.
It's about using this digital space to create a virtual network of support.
To show that even in the darkest of times, there's still a desire for peace and connection.
So as we come to the end of this deep dive, the situation in South Sudan is obviously incredibly serious.
And it's understandable if people are feeling a sense of despair or helplessness.
But that's where his concluding thoughts become so important.
He reminds us that conflict and suffering aren't permanent.
That the possibility for change always exists.
Even if it's hard to see right now.
And he connects this back to the vision of his father, retired General Joseph Legu,
who dreamed of a strong and unified South Sudan.
He's asking us to consider how our actions and the actions of those in power are shaping that vision.
Whether we're contributing to it or detracting from it.
And he commits to using this platform to keep amplifying these messages.
To foster understanding and build resilience.
To keep the hope for peace alive. His final call to action is so clear. Choose wisdom over destruction, he says.
Protect human life above all else.
It echoes that core message. Your life is more precious than anything else.
It brings the whole message full circle.
And he ends with this heartfelt sign-off. Stay safe, my people.
Stand strong.
May peace find its way back to our land soon.
It's a powerful ending to a really urgent message.
It is, and it leaves us with this final thought. What role can we play, even those of us far removed from this conflict, in fostering the conditions for peace?
Even amidst these seemingly insurmountable challenges.
It's a question that goes beyond South Sudan.
It's a question for all of us.
That's something to think about.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for sharing this message with us and for listening to The Deep Dive.
It's so important to stay informed about these situations.
It is, and we'll continue to bring you these stories.
To amplify these voices.
And hopefully contribute in some small way to a more peaceful future.
Absolutely.
Until next time, take care.
Take care.